Y'all ever have one of them days where you realize, crap, I got to fix something, but I got to order something to where I can fix something because I don't have what I need to fix something here on hand. So I got to get something so I can fix something. And then you start fixing that something that broke. And while you're waiting on the something that you ordered to fix the something that you broke, you realize that the something that was broke isn't broke anymore. Yeah, I know it's weird. It made my head hurt too. But just hang in there with me and we'll explain.
Hey y'all, everybody's favorite bumpkin here. Welcome back to another Monday Tool Talk at the Temple. Now, a lot of you guys probably know by now, I've been in the middle of this somewhat painful journey with my new to me mini mill. And right whenever I first bought it, thing was running great. You know, everything was hunky dory, happiness, rainbows, unicorns frolicking in fields, la la la. And up until it wasn't. And you guys, when we did the live stream a couple of weeks ago, you guys remember we were discussing this. It was weird, man. It would run, then stop, then pick up a little bit, stop, back, forth, and it was just totally random all over the page. Me and my counterpart from work, Shelby, we picked through this thing. We couldn't find what in the hell was going on with it, and I'd pretty much resigned myself to either having to pull the motor and the control board and send it out to a guy that claims he can fix them but doesn't put any guarantee on them, or converting it and upgrading it at the same time to using a servo motor. A lot of you guys may know that as a sewing machine motor because that's exactly what it is. Hang on. Here, I'll grab it and I'll show you. Believe it or not, this little 5-pound lump of aluminum and copper and plastic right here, this is rated at an honest-to-God 1 horsepower, 750-watt motor. These are intended as a replacement motor for commercial-grade sewing machines. And a lot of people in the hobby machining industry use these for repowering old machines or upgrading machines whenever they have a failure or they want to upgrade to something with a little bit more ass to it. Now, I was looking at this a while back for an upgrade on the lathe because my motor on my lathe is a little bit underpowered for some of the stuff I do, and also the RPM range just isn't where I want it to. Basically, I've got 6 speeds on my lathe, and I've got to play, drive belt Jenga whenever I want to change something around. With these things can reach up to 4,500 RPM. Yes, that's 4,500 RPM, and they're crazy quiet when they're doing it. But another benefit of these are actually a 3-phase DC motor. The low end torque of them, they have their full rated torque at virtually 0 RPM. So for real slow speed stuff, like for a lathe or something like that, they're bang on right in the middle of the sweet spot and ticking off all the boxes of where you want to be. Now, this is where things took kind of a hard left turn. Originally, I had looked at doing the servo motor swap on the lathe as an upgrade for that. Then little boy blue back here, the mini mill, that started giving me some ass pain. To me, a tool that doesn't work is a useless tool and it's scrap metal. Well, I already had some real money in this thing, so I figured I need to do one of 3 things: fix it, feed it, or fuck it. Well, didn't want to fuck it and chunk it out the door because I just got the damn thing. Number 2, I didn't want to feed it, and by feed it, meaning throwing more money into the same parts that had already failed or apparently had failed. We'll circle back to that in a minute. So that leaves us with fix it. A lot of guys that have the older style desktop milling machines, they have a brushed motor. And the servo motors are a very common upgrade for those things for repowering them whenever they have a board failure or a motor failure. Not to mention the older brushed motors, they just ain't got that much oomph to them anyway. So no problem. I'd already been researching these servo motors for, the lathe upgrade. We'll just grab one and we'll do the mill with it, right? Not quite. Buddy Bezos failed me a little bit here. This thing was supposed to have been delivered earlier in the day. Well, I kept watching it and kept watching it, and it kept getting delayed. And then finally I got the dreaded "will be delivered by 10 p.m. message on my Amazon app. And you guys out there know that most of the time whenever you see that, that means you ain't getting your shit that day, and it's going to show up in a day or two. I've still got some stuff that was supposed to have been here yesterday that I'm not going to see for another couple days. Thanks, Jeff. Anyway, while I was waiting on the big blue truck, yeah, blue gray, yeah, well, UPS, they're the big brown truck, so yeah. While I was waiting on Amazon to figure out their life and figure out how in the hell to find my house with my stuff, I decided, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and start tearing this thing down to where I can get all the pieces and parts off of the mill and start getting it prepped to where I can start doing this motor swap. Because there is quite a bit of fabrication involved along with it. And that's where I stumbled onto something that, honestly, this is a failure on my part. This thing was staring me right in the face the entire damn time, and I never saw it. It's that whole forest for the trees thing, y'all. So anyway, since I was doing this, obviously I didn't have a camera set up because I'll admit I was grumpy, I was hangry, been a long day at work. I just wanted to get some shit done. I wanted my Amazon stuff to show up to where I could start moving forward. Let's go. We got a plan. Let's go. I didn't get any of that on video. However, I did take a picture of the culprit of this. But the long and drawn out version of it is we did a bunch of shit and when we figured out what was going on. The short story is the mill's fixed and I found the damn problem in it finally. And this was staring me in the face the whole damn time, but I just didn't realize it. Here, I'll show you guys what. Now, like I said, I got a picture of the parts that I found that were failed in this, and I'm going to insert that right here in the video to where you guys can take a look at it, and then I'm going to give you a description of what you're seeing. Okay, everybody's got a chance to see the picture. Yeah, that's some really tiny stuff there. Now, in that picture, that's in the palm of my hand with a 10 millimeter nut there for size scale. These are some pictures I actually took and I shot Shelby whenever I had my eureka moment, whenever I found all this stuff. Why they did this, I don't know. But to be able to explain it to you guys a little bit better and my level of crayon creativity here, I got some drawn up on the whiteboard over there I want to show you guys. And that way you'll get a better understanding of what you're seeing in the picture and why this was creating a problem for me, okay? Sit tight. Okay, the long and the short of it is, brushless motors, there's a couple different flavors of them. The particular brushless motor that's on the power head of my mill, that one has an encoder built into the end of it, and basically what it does is it monitors where the motor is in its position, and it monitors a couple different things at one time. It monitors the speed of the motor. It monitors the amount of load that's being placed on the motor, based on how heavy of a cut you're trying to make, whatever. Anyway, the way the encoder in that thing was built is totally different than anything that I have experience with my RC cars or any other brushless electric motor that I've dealt with in the past. And don't get me wrong, I'm very familiar with brushless and how it works, because, like I said, I play around with a lot of toy cars, and a lot of those toy cars have a brushless electric drivetrains in them. So I run both censored and uncensored motors in some of my RC trucks, just depending on what it is and what I'm doing with it. This is where the nerd science quotient comes in, so bear with me, okay, guys? All right, don't make fun of my artwork here. I can't draw, period, end of story. I did not receive that DNA from my mom, all right? My mom's an extremely talented artist. I mean, she is amazing with what she does. Me, not so much. I draw stick figures, and it looks like whoever, well, let's be real here. I draw stick figures poorly, with a lot of descriptive terms that I can't say here because people will get offended. But anyway, this is a basic drawing of the end of that motor, and these square blocks here are 3 Hall effect sensors, and these little brown tick marks in the ring, that's the encoder ring that these Hall effect sensors are reading. Now, they're a magnetic sensor, and what they do is they generate a waveform as this ring passes around them. But since there's 3 of them, they are monitoring not only the speed and the load that's being put on that motor, they're monitoring the position of this motor at a given time as well. Now, this is the center part of the motor shaft. This is our encoder ring. The square blocks, that's our Hall effect sensors. Now, the Hall effect sensors are mounted to a plate, this outer perimeter here, but you notice these very poorly drawn red oval slots here? Any of you guys that are familiar with, Dyna ignitions in Harley or metric bikes, or if you're somewhat familiar with how a lot of ignition systems install, period, you'll recognize those. These are timing slots, and that allows that encoder, or the Hall effect sensors, if you will, to be clocked and timed to the encoder for positioning. Now, this is where it gets interesting. When I opened this thing up, it had one metal screw in this location here, and then I saw 2 white pins here and here. Now, I never thought anything of it about the 2 white plastic pins because I thought they were just for positioning for the encoder, or for the pickup plate rather. That's where I was wrong. And yeah, I'm wrong, folks. I was big wrong on this, like bigly. Anyway, what those were a hollow plastic screw. Those are words that should never be used together to describe something, period. But hang in there with me. They were a hollow plastic screw, 2 of them. The third one was metal. It was a normal screw. But there were 2 hollow plastic screws, and the heads had popped off of them. And what was happening is, even though this brushless motor is extremely smooth running, there's always going to be a certain amount of vibration with anything, especially whenever it's influenced by an electric motor running or anything else. So what was happening is, whenever it would vibrate, since those 2 screws had the heads popped off of them, even though at the time I didn't realize they were a screw, it was allowing 2 of these Hall effect sensors to float a little bit because of the third screw over here that was actually anchored down solidly. It was letting those float and move a little bit, and it was screwing up the communication pathway between the sensor on the motor and the control board. So that's why it was skitzing out. Now, think back to the picture I showed you guys, okay? That's a 10 millimeter nut in those pictures. Those screws on that thing, they are 2 millimeter diameter screws. They are M2 screws. Yeah, they're 80 thousandths of an inch around. And then they made them out of plastic that was hollow. God, the hell were they thinking? So anyways, fast forward to Saturday night, when I had my big aha moment whenever I found this. I put some screws in this damn thing. They ain't going to go anywhere anytime soon. I dug into my RC hardware. I found some stainless steel button head screws, along with some flat washers and some lock washers, and a little tiny drop of blue Loctite, just for good measure. And then I retimed that pickup plate to where the motor runs smoothly and it doesn't cog or surge, anything like that. And I watched this thing like a hawk for like an hour and a half solid. Every now and then I'd go over and I'd dial the speed up or down, let it run at a different RPM. All the while I'm waiting on Amazon to show up with my servo motor that I had full intention of swapping over into my mill to where I can get my mill up and running. Well, guess what, guys? We dodged that bullet. This is one of those weird times where it's kind of a pre-planned failure with a good outcome, I guess, because, I'm not sending the motor back to Amazon. Guess what? It's going to go in the lathe. We'll touch on that later on down the road whenever we get to that point where we can free up some time to where we can pull the lathe off the bench and gut it and do some upgrades on it, because there's going to be some fabrication involved in that you guys might be interested in seeing as well. But at the end of it all, we're going to get more power out of it. It's going to be more efficient. We're going to have a whole lot wider range of RPM on it, plus a couple of features that we haven't had on it up to this point, as far as being able to program a soft start to where it starts up gentle instead of just bang, here we go. And also, I can vary the speed on the fly, whereas before I had to swap belts around and play dry belt Jenga. I'm not going to miss that. And those parts, they're going to come out and they're either going to go in a box or they're going to get repurposed for something else, or they may reincarnate themselves through a trip through the lathe into a part for a motorcycle we need. But anyway, the good news is, the long and the short of it, my mill issues are fixed. Thank God. And by the way, it's been running in the background this whole time when I've been shooting this video. Just because, yeah, call me a little gun shy, but I want to make sure. So anyway, since we got the mill up and running, and since we're here shooting a video for a segment called Tool Talk at the Temple, let me show you how we're going to use this thing and how we needed this thing for making some parts for Liberty Risk for the Ramblin' Park series for the 750 Shadow that we're doing for my son. Sit tight. Be right back. Y'all might want to go grab some snackies and a comfy chair or a beanbag or something like that, because there's going to be a little bit of nerdy math here in the very near future. Brace yourself. Okay, here's our plate we're making for this headlight mount on Liberty Risk. Now, I already rough cut this the other night on the mill whenever it was still giving me fits before I figured out the cure for that. Doing these 2 radius cuts here with a fly cutter, that took about 3 freaking hours. I thought I was going to need a 12-step program by the time I was done with that, but it had to be done. Also, I had to make a small relief cut here on the bottom side to where the bottom of this plate clears the steering neck on the frame. Now we got to mark it out to where we can get 4 holes here, 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 and here, and we got to get them in the right spot to where we can bolt this thing down on top of the cowbells and the upper fork covers to where we can bolt the headlight to the bike. So first thing I did is I measured from the front of the tree back. That way I've got a known reference measurement. And then I took a pair of dividers. Yes, old school mechanical dividers. This is old tech, but you know what? This is the kind of stuff that put battleships out in the water in World War I and II, and this is what put people on the moon, okay? Just because it's old doesn't mean it's irrelevant. These are analog. You don't have to calibrate them. Use your eyeball. Use common sense. And they are very repeatable, and they are very useful. These are admittedly a fairly cheap set. They're from a measuring set that Harbor Freight sells. I'll put a link to that down in the description down below, because this is also where I get my depth gauge for setting carb floats and things like that. Now, I will say, if you spend a little bit more coin, they've actually got some really nice dividers at Harbor Freight, and I use those on the daily at work. I just don't have a set here at the house because these suit my purposes here totally fine. But I'll put you a link for those in there as well. That way you can see them, and if you got a little bit of extra coin, you can go ahead and pick those up, because honestly, they make setting layouts up like this a lot easier, because they're just, they've got better fit and finish to them. They're more consistent. We got our bolt holes measured out as far as the width of them goes. Set that little guy aside. Okay. So on our long run, our center to center distance on our bolt hole, that's going to be 5.550. From the front edge here back, I measured that off camera, that's going to be 0.450. I had to break out the big kid because standard 6-inch caliper just didn't quite have enough reach for this. So our total width here, we are at 6.810. While we're here, let's go ahead and math that to where we can find our center distance. Actually, we don't need to math that. Half of 6.810, that's going to be 3.405. We're at 6.810 on our total width, but our bolt holes are on 5.550. Cell phone comes in handy. Oh, didn't mean to open up the camera. I need to calculate a little bit later. So our center line on our bolt hole is 5.550. We're going to divide that by 2 because we're splitting it in half. So that comes up with 2.775. Remember that number or write it down. Our bolt hole here on the front, it needs to be 0.630 inches from the corner here back, and then 0.450 back this way. These little small machinist squares, these things come in handy. You can actually get a 4-piece set of these things on Amazon pretty affordably. I'll put you a link in the description down below. So we take our square, lay it on that. We're dialed into .630 here from the corner. Oop, missed it. There we go. Now, since this is a true square and the head of your caliper is a true square, you butt them up and square against one another. There's your distance line right there. See? Now I know this red layout fluid's not ideal. Sorry guys, I don't have any blue on hand right now. We need to be 450 from the front. So let's dial that down to 450. Keep in mind, the back side of the jaw here, that's ground square too. So we just come up, square off of that. And there's our bullseye. That's where our bolt hole needs to be. Now we just got to plot out the rest of them. So as not to bore you guys, I'm going to do that here and not bother shooting video of it. That way we can get down to the meat and taters of it where we're poking holes in metal and making curlicues. We got all of our holes plotted out and marked out as far as where we need to put our drill marks and everything. Now, slight sidebar here. All right. Now you guys have probably seen these little automatic spring-loaded center punches. They come in handy. I got a couple of them floating around the shop here. The only downside is sometimes you get one, they're just not real consistent. That's kind of luck of the draw. I actually broke down and I spent some real money and I bought a very well rated good one for a whopping $10. I'll put the link in the description from the Amazon purchase on that. But if you got a cheapo like I do, and I've wore out a couple of these things doing this, these things come apart real easy. The little barrel with the anvil, it just screws right off the end of it. Oh. Yep, gravity works. Anyway, like I said, it just screws right off the end of it. Take that little guy out of there and put it in a cordless drill and hold it up against a bench grinder or die grinder or something like that. The anvil in these things, you know, the punch itself, the popper, whatever you want to call it, they come out of there real easy because these things just, you know, they unscrew really simple. It slides right out. Take that, put it in a cordless drill, sharpen that thing up to where you got a good fine point on it. I'll show you how you can get your holes dead on center whenever you make a scribe line like this. See, I've got these scribe lines here. Now, they're not real deep. I didn't go ape shit crazy with it. But when you've got a good tip on your center punch, what you can do is you can very lightly drag that across where you're trying to mark. And the tip of your center punch will act as a feeler, if you will, and you'll feel it fall into that gully where you made that scribe line. You can follow along in one direction and then come into the other, and eventually you're going to hit that little crossroads there where your scribe lines intersect. Pop it right there, because that's going to have you bang on center on your mark. There you have it. Now, I didn't go ape shit crazy and try to poke a hole all the way through this damn plate with this center punch. All right, you guys remember those counterbore bits that I was showing you the other day whenever we were doing that backplate adapter for the lathe chuck? Here, I'm going to show you how they work and how they, how they behave in action, so to speak. Now, first step on using these things, you got to figure out how deep you want your counterbore. Take a caliper, measure out how high how tall your bolt head is. In this case, we're measuring 0.165. If you want it to be dead flush, set up a drill stop, or if you've got a DRO, which I'm lucky enough to have. If you don't have a DRO, measure it out, set you a drill stop on your drill press. Don't try to use these things in a hand drill. It won't end well. So I've already drilled that hole to 1/4 inch, which I'm 5/1000ths away from the clearance drill I need for M6. While we've got it there, we're going to do a quickie bit swap. We're going to pull the drill bit out, and we're putting the counterbore in. That way we maintain alignment on our hole. Give it a little squirt of motion lotion there. Now remember, these are supposed to run slow. Here, let me bring you guys in a little closer. That way you can see what's happening. All right, right there, our pilot has just entered our material. Now that pilot has a very, very gentle reamer section built into that, but that's also meant to maintain alignment for the cutter on the counterbore in relation to the hole. And right there, we just started making contact and making chips. So I'm going to zero my DRO, and then I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to push this thing down 0.170 inch because I want to be more or less practically flush. Realistically, I'm going to be about 5 thousandths below flush, but, you know, this way we're consistent across the board. And there we got 170. So cool. Wait a minute. I'm not flush. Where did my math fail me? That's where my math failed me. I broke the rule. I didn't zero my caliper before I measured the head of that bolt. So the head of that bolt actually measures 0.236. Now, considering our material here is 0.375 thick, I'm not worried about that too much. I'm still going to flush it up because we got 4 bolts that's holding this headlight mount down. I wouldn't go very much more than that though, or else you're going to be compromising the strength at the bottom of the bolt hole. So let's go ahead and run that back down to 240. Give it another spritz of motion lotion there. Now remember, we've not moved anything, so we've maintained our hole position. And there we're at 240. And we still got plenty of real estate at the bottom of the bolt hole to give support to our fastener. There you go. Now let's just do it 3 more times. And there you have it, folks. It's going to fit. It's going to fit right well, too. It's going to clear the frame neck. Nothing's going to rub. But it's going to cover up all the ugly space on that lower triple tree because Honda didn't really spend a whole lot of time trying to make that thing pretty. But this is why I like using counterbores for doing bolts like this. See? Flat. But you can still get to them pretty easy enough. Now, these are comically long. I've just got those in there to give you a demonstration on why I like doing it like this, because I'm still waiting on Amazon to show up with the bolts I ordered for this thing. I've got regular black oxide finish, but with them being an Allen head, and especially where they're located at, they're not going to be that easy to get to, and plus they're also going to be prone to having water setting in them if you get caught out in the rain or, you know, if you wash the bike, whatever. So if you don't use stainless in that location, guess what? They're going to rust and they're going to look like shit. So, yeah, you know. Anyway, I did not want this segment to turn into how we're trying to build a 20-year-old Honda Shadow into a billet monstrosity. That's not the goal here. The simple fact was, we needed a headlight mount. I didn't want to spend the money on the OEM stuff. The OEM stuff looked pretty ugly to begin with. And also, I wanted to use this as an experience to where I could kind of share some knowledge with you folks and also with my son, because this is one of those things where there's a lot more involved into it than just what you see here on the camera, okay? It's time consuming, and you gotta apply a little bit of gray matter to where you can plan everything out, mark everything out, measure it, and then execute it and hope like hell everything lines up. And I'm here to tell you, sometimes it don't. So anyway, that's pretty much going to do it for this run on Tool Talk at the Temple. I just want to let you guys know, hey, weird shit happens from time to time, and I'm as guilty as the next person, okay? Don't overlook the potentially obvious, especially when it's staring you right in the face, even if it looks right. Question things. Dig in a little bit. That's what I ended up having to do on the milling machine, okay? Because I would have swore up and down those were just like an alignment pin or something like that for that sensor plate. Who knew? Anyway, when it's all said and done, we got it up and running. It's solid. It's consistent. It's making parts again to where we can move forward on other projects like Liberty Risk and other bikes that we got lined up for Ramblin' Park. So anyways, if you like what we do here, go over and check us out on the Patreon, because there's a lot of stuff over there that we can discuss over there that we can't really discuss here on YouTube for various reasons, you know. So anyway, remember, I love you guys. I look forward to seeing each and every single one of your bright, shining, smiling faces down in the comment section below or on the live chat when this video premieres on Monday night. It's going to be at 8 o'clock Central Time, or 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Sorry, I had to correct myself there. I lived in Central Time Zone damn near all my life, y'all, until I moved down here to Florida. It still ain't stuck yet. Anyway, Yeah. Let's go make some parts. Let's go fix some bikes. Do the damn thing.
Force will be with you, always.